And oh, and that's so good that you remembered to turn the recording on. And I'm substituting for Emily tonight because she's under the weather. And I'd like to welcome everybody on behalf of the United Democratic Clubs of Alabama, and welcome everyone to this third of Alabama Blue School. Please go ahead now that people are on, and post your county in the chat so we get an idea of where everybody's county is. And I'll say that periodically for a minute until we get more people on, but please go ahead and post your county in the chat so that we get an idea of how diverse a group we have, at least geographic diversity. All right. Tonight's speakers are speaking on recruiting an army of volunteers at the county level. Our first speaker will be Linda Turner. She's the chair of the Houston County Democrats. And Bryan Fuenmayor is one of the leaders of the Blue Wave Mobile, which is a new Democratic club in the Mobile area. Each of the speakers will have 20 minutes for their presentations. And then at the end of their 20 minutes, which if you do the math adds up to 40 minutes, we'll do questions for another 10 to 15 minutes. However, if you have comments about what they're presenting or questions that can be answered after the speakers speak, feel free to chat in the chat box as much as you want. Go ahead and make comments on their talks, and a lot of times we get really good discussions going in the chat, and it helps facilitate our discussions, because generally what happens is there's a lot of people who know a lot of things that are on the Zoom, and they can contribute what they know by putting comments into the chat. Okay. If there's no particular concerns or questions right now, we'll go ahead and get started with our first speaker, and that will be Linda Turner.
All right. Hi, everybody. I hope you've had a good week. Starting off, I will tell you I'm less prepared than I normally am, but one of the things I want to talk about a little bit is mistakes that I made. When I started 4.5 years ago, I wasn't I knew nothing about nonprofits and how they worked and all of those types of things. So when I would ask people to volunteer, I wouldn't always be specific about what I needed. So that was the first problem I had. And then the second problem was I didn't know most of these people or what talents they might have and skills. So those were the first kind of problems I ran into. So to kind of fix that, I created a questionnaire, basically asking people to tell me a little bit about themselves. You know, what's your current job? Are you retired? How many hours do you work? You know, what special skills do you have? Have you ever worked on a campaign or another political task, or any nonprofit for that matter? And once I became wise enough to do that, I would put those questionnaires together, and I would have some of my executive staff go through them. And sometimes they would know some of them personally, and sometimes they wouldn't. And we've made a lot more progress that way by actually targeting what people know and asking for specifics. And you really do need to know what it is you're asking them and for how long. So those questionnaires help a lot with that. I want to say right off the top that all volunteer recruitment, in fact, everything I know about county party organizing right now, I will tell you is a relational template. It's not something I'm used to, but relations is how this works. It's building onto the people that you know, and then hoping that they will bring people they know into the fold. So for someone who's not a people person, this has been a difficult task for me. One of the other things that came up when I would do all of those things prior to the questionnaire is that I would ask people to make phone banking calls. And while I would train them and they would know how to do the mechanics of it and they'd have the script, I discovered that some people have personalities where when they are confronted with any kind of conflict or disagreement, they shut down. And so I would get phone calls all the time about, well, I don't want to do this anymore because I talked to so-and-so, you know, and they were either rude or whatever. So I was losing phone bankers because of that. So I had to add to my questionnaire things like, do you consider yourself an introvert? Are you conflict adverse? More of a, you know, personality thing. And then instead of just weeding through the questionnaires, I would actually have one of my executive staff have a short 10-15-minute talk with these individuals and fill it out and, you know, fill them out. So it takes a lot of man hours and a lot of interpersonal reaction to finally get volunteers that you can A, depend on, and B, utilized properly. So one of the first things after we developed our questionnaire was we then began to identify our needs, from, you know, virtual phone banking to door canvassing, even to the head of, like, the chair, the vice chair, the secretary, the treasury. We needed to have a duties and responsibilities, otherwise known as a position description. So we started with the leadership positions and we began to develop those tasks and duties. It has helped us a lot to focus on where we need things and who's responsible for what. But you can find these position descriptions on many government sites. If you need someone to be an admin for a while, you know, look at what the duties are, make it fit your little box that you're trying to get built. The one thing I wish I had a strong person in is the volunteer coordinator position, because that would free me up to do all of the other chair stuff. But that is a very special skill I'm discovering. First, you need to be able to interact with people and realize that they're volunteers, that, you know, that's the bottom line. So whatever it is that they want to do is what you need to help lead them to do. They also, a volunteer coordinator would be able to keep track of all of the people and what they want to do and what they actually have done in the past. Right now, that still falls on me, and it's quite a, you know, it takes a lot of time, especially during the election. About 120 days before the election, it's really time consuming to manage all of the different areas that have to be managed, from fundraising to, like I said, poll watchers. You have to have drivers. You have to have people who are willing to go out and put up campaign signs. You know, you need financial support. So you need someone who's going to be able to make that ask for you. So identifying the needs, there's an unlimited amount of needs during an election. They're everywhere. A vote builder expert. I was actually very fortunate when I started to have someone who had been working with vote builder for a while. And therefore, between the two of us, we were able to create good list, and we were able to create training that was step by step. I have learned that when people do their virtual phone banking, if you don't have something to give them from one election to the next that talks them through it again, you're starting from scratch. So in addition to having the written step by step, we would do a lot of role playing, because again, you're going to run across the disgruntled Democrat. You're going to run across someone who has all of a sudden decided they're Republican, and occasionally you're going to be speaking to someone who's a hardcore Trumper. And you have to be prepared to be able to say to them, appreciate your time. Don't want to have this discussion. Have a nice day and move on. And role playing helps people feel comfortable doing that. So identify what you need. Make sure you have a questionnaire. Now you got to decide too, who are you going to ask? Well, my solution to that now is to ask everybody. But I always have a plan of what it is I'm asking them to do. Recently asked some people to call all of the attorneys in our area and find out if any of them would run for any of the vacant judgeships. Okay, so they have been working on that now for a little while. And as they tell me what roadblocks they run into, we try to address them. As you can imagine, some of the attorneys feel like all of the judges lean Republican, and it might damage their ability to be effective in court if everybody and their brother knows that, you know, they're really Democrats. So it's talking through things like that with the volunteers. And once you've done those things and you have your pool of volunteers and what they're going to do, someone has to manage all of that information in a system. We use Google Docs, and some people will volunteer for 2 hours. Some people, like Les, has probably done over 2,500 hours of phone calls for me. So you have to know, you know, which ones are the powerhouses and which ones you can depend on to do the short-term stuff, or what I call micro task. It's nice, like I said, if you have a volunteer coordinator who can kind of manage all of that around. You know, you have a captain for the sign that they interact with, and they may shoot out 10 other volunteers. You have to also make sure that they feel empowered and knowledgeable enough to do the task you're asking them to do. In your messaging and when you're talking to your volunteers, you always want to say thank you, and you always want to give them the confidence that they can do what you're asking. So again, ask everybody, know what you need, identify your needs and your roles, and keep an accurate pool list. People will come and go, and some primaries they'll work, and some generals they'll work, but they may not work both of them for you. Those are the kind of things you need to keep track of, because you don't want to be asking the same people that's already told you no when the general election is coming up. So those are my tips for recruitment, and hopefully you can take something away from it. I do want to say that if you go to traindems.org, there are a multitude of training programs that are good. And they actually do have one on using relational organizing to manage your campaign or your county party. And those are very good overviews of how to approach things. So thank you for your time. I know I wasn't 20 minutes, but
You did great, Linda. I just took a page full of notes of what you said. So you did, it was wonderful and very much appreciated. And I have to say, as my own county chair, you're way ahead of me as far as being organized in the way you recruit volunteers. So I just learned a lot in that last 15 minutes. So thank you.
Thank you.
Bryan, are you ready? It looks like you are.
Yes, ma'am. All right. Good evening, everyone. Y'all can see my slide.
Yes, you can.
All right. My name is Bryan Fuenmayor. My pronouns he, him. I am in Mobile County, Alabama, and I'm part of a group of volunteers who are creating a new Democratic group down here called Blue Wave Mobile. I was asked to talk about a bit about volunteering, and this is based off of my own personal experience of organizing volunteers, but also volunteering myself with a multitude of organizations. I've only been doing this for a couple years, so I'm still learning and I appreciate everything that Linda said as well. Very great tips. So basically, I will be just re-emphasizing what she said. I might say a few new things, but this is really just to really hit it home. So the first thing I will have talked about is, of course, the importance of volunteers. Many of our clubs and executive committees, I would say all of them, don't have any paid staff, right? So volunteers are the lifeblood of our organizations, of campaigns, of all the organizations that we are part of. And with that being said, we must really appreciate them, treat them for the worth that they are, because we couldn't do this work without them. And I've basically divided this up into 4 sections. So you have your foundation, recruitment, engagement, and then retention. For the foundation, in my personal opinion, you don't want to go out and find volunteers until you're ready to receive them. So you want to build this, you want to ask yourself, are you ready to put them to work? If you're going to ask someone to volunteer, do you already know where you already have a place for them to go? So in order to start building that foundation, like Linda said, you definitely need a volunteer committee chairperson, someone to head this up, where their only job is managing volunteers, because it is a full-time job. And as always, it's good practice to have a co-chair as well, so that something happens to them, they can help out, and also brings a succession to it. So if they're retiring, if they're moving for some reason, makes it so much easier to bring in someone else in order to fill in that volunteer committee chair. And of course, the volunteer positions, like Linda said, whether it's canvassing or if you want to put them in your communications committee to handle social media, newsletters, identify all the volunteers that you need, come up with job descriptions, policies, procedures, and rewards for them as well. What do they get out of it, other than, just trying to turn Alabama blue? When you're writing all of these procedures and job descriptions, put yourself in their shoes. Don't ask them to do anything you don't want to do. Um, you don't want to overwhelm them. You don't want to confuse them. So empathy and compassion is definitely essential there. Create a sign-up system, digital and physical. There are pros and cons to both, but both are definitely needed. One recent con to physical signups, for example, we had a couple of tabling events recently, and we have little sign-up sheets, and you just couldn't understand what people wrote on it. People's handwriting sometimes, it's the cursive. It's although they are right there, and there are no technology barriers to physically signing up, that is one of the cons. So unless you're there and asking them to write clearly so that you can understand, digital comes in to save the day in that case, because then they're just typing it in and it's all clear. You don't have to interpret people's handwritings. So definitely have both. But I would recommend leaning into the digital one. One thing that we did was we created a QR system where people can scan their phones at your tabling events, and that will take them to a digital sign up where they can just sign up on their phone right then and there. So that's an idea that you can have as well. Create a database of all your volunteers, including their skills, pronouns, and hours served. This will help you become so much more organized rather than just trying to remember what skills people have, what pronouns they use. The hours served will give you an idea of just how much appreciation you should have. Although everyone should be appreciated, as later on when we get to the retention part, we'll see how important celebrating their anniversaries are. And also how much hard work they have. And consider background checks for certain roles. I'm not talking about someone was arrested because of possession of marijuana. I'm talking about severe issues that, depending on the role that you want to put them into, you don't want to put someone who is convicted for sex crimes alone with someone canvassing together. It's something to think about. Something I've seen in some nonprofit for the most part, you won't need it, but something to consider. Recruitment. So again, like I said, tabling events. Always make sure that you're trying to find volunteers whenever you're tabling events. Anytime you're at some kind of social events, word of mouth, friends, family, and neighbors. Like Linda said, ask everybody. Don't leave anybody out. You never know who has the capacity, the time, and the energy, and the skills that can truly help our states. Um, Put a form on your website for volunteers to find, so for them to sign up. Put it on your social media. Put it on your email newsletters. Just everywhere. Spread the word. All right. So now that you have your volunteers and the foundation, it is, in my opinion, it's so important to reach out to them almost immediately. Start creating a positive and healthy relationship with them. Get to really know them, like Linda said. Get to know what their skills are, so that you can better place them where they feel comfortable, where they feel confidence. Um, and that will also help with the retention as well. See where their skills and commitment level could be best placed. Some people can volunteer during the week, others just on the weekends. Some can do 1 hour, some can do 10 hours, but find all of that out. And of course, things change, things happen in people's lives. What they can do right now, they can't do later. Of course, they're volunteers, so we can't, so it's not good practice to make them feel guilty, make them feel appreciated, thank them for their time, and just hope that they'll come back, that life's circumstances change. And of course, train each volunteer as needed. That goes without saying. You don't want to put a volunteer in a position and they don't know what they're doing or they don't feel comfortable. Take as much time as they need in order to really know what they're doing. And like Linda said, do refresher trainings as well. Just because they start doing something right now doesn't mean that they're going to remember to do it later on. And finally, retention, right? So it's easy finding, might be easy finding volunteers and to get them started, but keeping them there has been a challenge in many organizations. So how do you retain those volunteers? Here are some tips that I have come up with or that I have seen. So like Linda said, also reemphasizing, show volunteers appreciation on a regular basis. Say thank you. Show them they're very truly needed and wanted. Um, Create a fun environment and reward your volunteers, like a t-shirt or some kind of acknowledgement. The more fun, the better. I've been in organizations where we'll have a meeting and there'll be food, there'll be music, and there'll be jokes and laughing, and it's always been a great time, especially working hard all day. You go to a place where, it's just makes you feel good. So definitely create that fun environment um, for them any way that you can. Maintain open and effective communication. You want to make sure that your volunteer committee chair and co-chairs are accessible to your volunteers. Um, so if they reach out with a question, it is super important to maintain that open and effective communication with them. Encourage community. So some volunteers join in order to meet like-minded folks, to find friends, to network. And so encourage a community among your volunteers. Do social events where they can network with one another. Because especially like in this red states, it is so important to find like-minded folks and to find a community there. Celebrate anniversaries. That's where I said in the beginning was, find out how many hours they worked, put in when they joined, when they started, keep track of what they've done, and celebrate their anniversaries. That'll help with the retention as well. One thing that retains me personally volunteering is food. So definitely feed your volunteers. There's nothing worse than going to an event and you're hungry and thirsty and they got nothing for you. There's no water, there's no snacks or pizza. So definitely feed them. Um, And that doesn't have to mean like a super expensive restaurant. It could be simple as, like I said, bringing pizza or some sandwiches from your favorite chain that you put in the group chat earlier. I would not be mad if you went and got some Taco Bell. That's one of my favorites. I didn't put that in the chat, but it is. And lastly, most important thing, get their feedback. So talk with them, be like, hey, what did you think about this? How can we improve this experience for you? Truly listening and getting their feedback will help improve your procedures, improve your system of volunteers, and help you be better for the next one. And yeah, that's pretty much all I got too. If anyone has any questions or comments, I am here to answer them.
I want to chime in just a minute about the follow-up. When we first started door canvassing, we do it 3-2 a team. 2 people knock on the door, 1 person is driving a vehicle. And one of the incidents that occurred was the person driving the car got distracted. The people decided to separate. So now the 2 people at the door are no longer together. And one of those individuals was a Black female. And all of a sudden, police cars have pulled up on the house that she's knocking on, and they have drawn their guns. Now, that was a frightening experience for them, but it horrified me when they got back. So I had to reiterate to them that the method I use for canvassing is not optional. She had no safe place to go once that car had gotten distracted. It was lucky that 2 weeks earlier I had made the decision that we would wear vests that identified who we were. And I think that situation did not go poorly simply because she had that vest on and was allowed to walk away from the door. So debriefing is extremely important. Making sure they have water. That's the other reason the vehicle is there, to make sure that they have water in the back of the truck or whatever they want to drink, and they have access to it right there. I have a lot of people who are elderly who can't walk, but they can participate by driving the vehicle in the neighborhood. And so they get to feel like they've contributed. So debriefing is important because things can happen out there that you might never imagine. So after every canvass, whether it's phone banking or door knocking or any other activity we have, like we did an event at one of the parks, I always come back because I can't be everywhere. And I always get everybody back together and say, okay, tell me what happened. How did you see this? What can we do better? What can we do different? And I do that, even though it's a good idea that, we love to go to Thirsty Pig and drink beer and eat onion rings and stuff like that afterwards. But I have found that people will get distracted there and not tell me everything that happens. So we always meet at the office parking lot and depart, and everybody has to come back to that parking lot, give us their best, and we have a 5-minute debrief. So that's my offer of what I've learned on that end. Thank you.
I have a question. I can start the questions going, and then if other people want to kind of raise their hand or unmute, then we can have a question answer. Linda, is there a copy or an example of the type of questionnaire that you use when you're either talking with your volunteers or having them fill it out?
Yes, I do have it's a word perfect questionnaire that I have. At one point we had it via QR code and everybody was signing in digitally, but then I lost my digital guy. So now I'm back to doing everything this way because I really don't understand the whole thing he created. But yes, I do have a questionnaire and be glad to share it with you guys. Just make sure I know I got your email, but there's anyone on here who doubts I have theirs, then just let me know. Otherwise, I'll send it to everybody on this list.
Linda, you can just send it to one of us and we'll send it to everybody else. Don't worry about that.
Okay,
Yeah.
that'll work.
There'll probably be a packet of information like the slides and the recording and everything, and that would be a great addition to the packet, I think.
Yeah,
So thank
agreed.
you, that'd be great. What other questions do we have for Bryan or for Linda?
I had a question.
Go.
Linda, this is actually broadly, this is for both of y'all. How many volunteers would you say either of your counties or organizations within your counties has right now? And you can get into specifics about like powerhouse volunteers and like, so like, what is a good number for y'all, would you say?
Well, I can tell you what I have. I have 5 to 6 truly dedicated people that I can call anytime of day or night and depend on. Many of those are also my executive staff. At the very first election in 2016 with Trump, I had people coming out of the woodwork to volunteer. I had more than I could train. And that was because I was poorly organized at that point. Now it runs anywhere between 20 and 25 people and during election time. And my goal, my ideal number is 50. I'm just not there yet.
Linda, a point of clarification for you before Bryan gets into his stuff. 50 like with like 50 like people who are involved every election, like what do you mean?
Yes. I would like to have a list of 50 people. I have 27 precincts, where voting precincts. So right off the bat, I need 27 people, one from each precinct. And then I need at least that many people to make sure that we cover those precincts. And if you do it, like I said, if we do 2 hours on Tuesday evenings and then 2 to 4 hours on Saturdays, I don't want to work anybody to death. So I want to be able to change out the individuals that are out in the heat and doing those kind of things. So we did quite a bit with 25, but it's not going to get us over the finish line. So during election, I really do need 50 people who are willing to come up and say, what do you need me to do for the next 160, 180 days?
As for me, our club is extremely new, so we don't have the only volunteers that we have right now is our steering committee, which is about 6 folks, but they're very dedicated, hardworking greats, which, in my opinion, is extremely valuable because it avoids burnout and it encourages you more when it's not just one person doing all the work, that is shared with everyone. Everyone's passionate about it. I will say that there might be, I have come in times where you have maybe too many volunteers, and you start to like pack them into separate things, and then you don't want your volunteers to feel like their time is being wasted. If they're just standing around and not doing anything, they feel like there's too many people doing the same thing. If you run into that, that's something to be aware of about having too many. But the most important thing is to make your volunteers feel appreciated, that you're not wasting their time and energy. Otherwise, they'll just go to another cause or they'll become jaded and leave.
Yeah. Other questions? What happens? I have a question. What happens when they do become jaded? Is there a technique, a strategy for either blessing and releasing or for reeling them back in? What do y'all think about volunteers who are whatever, tired or whatever?
Well, I can speak directly to a person who reached out to me and wanted to be the secretary. And I thought it was going to work out really great. But as Bryan said earlier, life happens. She runs a horse ranch. She has 3 stepchildren who live at home. And after many months of, her saying, yes, I'll do it, and not getting it done and all those kind of things, I called her into the office and I just said, it doesn't look like you have the time or the energy that you had hoped you would have. And, she says, you're right. And she said, I feel really bad about it. And, and I was like, look, we are all volunteers and there is no hard feelings here. You tell me when you can help and we'll look for someone else to take over the secretary position, which is kind of time consuming. I said, you can always work a voter registration table for 2 hours, or go to an event and represent us. Everybody's valuable. But I did need to, touch base with her and make sure that we were both on the same page. And I think she was appreciative. She does show up to my meetings religiously, even if she has to move things around. So she's the one that usually does the live feed for me on Facebook. I had another individual who was making phone calls for me. And like I said, I always follow up with them. And I had pulled the names off the vote builder. And when I checked in with her, I said, you had made 30 calls the other day. Have you made any more? And she said, I made one more and it went really badly. So I can't do this. And I said, okay, I hear what you're saying. So she told me what they said and all this kind of stuff. And, I was like, I hear it. And I realize now that you don't want to be talking to anyone that's not a Democrat. I said, so will you make my quarterly phone calls for me to the people that are, I know are my core people. There's 300 of them, but I need someone to call them every quarter, to make sure they still live here, make sure they still know we're meeting, just to touch base, and Les had been doing that, but he had done so many other phone calls. I really needed to take something off of him. So she said, yeah, I can do that. And she's been wonderful at that. So you want to find something for them to do, something that they feel comfortable doing. And had she said, no, I don't even want to make phone calls anymore, I would have said, thank you very much. If you decide there's something you can help with, like stuffing envelopes, and she said, yeah, I can do that kind of stuff. I said, okay. I just changed her in my Google Docs. I just changed what they said they were doing or wanted to do and put a different thing in there for them. And then everybody's happy and we go about our business. But yeah, I don't want to ever lose anybody. Even if they say I can't do it right now, I want to keep that contact with them. So that's my solutions.
Yeah, I agree with Linda 1%. She said it exactly. Find out, have that one-on-one conversation with them. Find out the reasons behind the reason why they became jaded. Maybe that's something that could be easily fixed. It could be something like life circumstance. Find them, see if they could be put somewhere else, maybe. If not, and there's absolutely nothing you could do to change their minds, definitely, again, thank them for everything that they've done. I would personally put in the date in your Google Docs or your database and follow up in a year. Don't expect them to reach out again. Be like, hey, it's been a while. How you been doing? And maybe their life circumstances has changed. Maybe their outlook to life and to volunteering has changed. So that could be an opportunity. If not, it's like, hey, completely understand. Call them again a year later after that. Maybe they changed it again. But yeah, don't ever lose your volunteers that way. Don't make them feel like they've been forgotten. When they see that, how much you remember them, how much they're appreciated, that might change their minds about volunteering and they'll come back.
I've got one more example of something that occurred early on that even before I became the chair, I was acting as the volunteer coordinator. And we had an elderly gentleman that was the chair and a very young man that was the vice chair. And they had been, of course, running the election during the first run that Doug Jones had, the special election. And I had one person who had been a candidate, don't remember now what for. It was an attorney, and just one of those individuals who's just negative and everything is everybody's fault but hers. And she called the vice chair up, this young man who had done the best to his ability and had done it without anyone's help, and basically told him he needed to resign and called him several different things that she had no business saying. You know, and he came and he was about to resign. This is when I had my volunteer that worked in the office, Brandy, who had seen everything that went on and knew how hard everybody had worked. And so she and I called Hunter in and we said, Hunter, you know, you did a fantastic job for your age, your skill level, the fact that you're going to school and you're working 2 jobs. Said, you shouldn't even be concerned about what she said, but I understand how you feel. But we are telling you, we need you, we want you, and don't take any more phone calls from that person. That's the first thing. So then I had to decide, you know, what was I going to approach this person, or was I going to leave it alone? My decision was to just, because he stayed on board, he kept working with us. And so my approach was that at the meetings, I don't tolerate negativity. Okay. So I just don't let those individuals have the floor. And this being someone who, as I said, was an attorney and pretty boastful, you know, two strong female personalities clashing in a meeting is noticeable. So after the meeting, I pulled her aside and I said, look, if you want to work as a cooperative person in this unit that we have, you are more than welcome. But I can't have you doing and saying the things you're saying to people. That is not going to work for me. So take that with however you want it. I don't want to push any Democrat out at all. But I'm not going to have someone who is pushing other people away. And bottom line is they left and have not been back. But sometimes you have to do what's necessary. And I felt that was necessary. So hopefully you can learn something from that.
I really appreciate the reality check of what you just said, Linda, because that's not an easy situation to approach in a straightforward way, the way you did it. But those things do happen. So questions from our Zoomers or comments? I appreciate a comment from our friends from Georgia. If you have any comments about how things go where you are, that would be of interest to us. Sarah, I'm talking to you.
Yeah, hey everyone. I kind of wanted to add it on to what y'all were just talking about and volunteers burnout. You know, we've been going hard for 2 years straight, and I oversee all of our county chairs throughout the state, and I'll have them come to me from time to time when they're just like, I just can't do this anymore. There's so much going on. It's just so stressful. And my first thing is to always try to talk them back from that ledge and let them know that it's okay to step away for a while. It's okay to take a break. We all have to do it. I have to do it. But for them to don't give up on us completely, you know, trust your other officers, trust the other people in your county that step in and do the work. There's always going to be a core group of people in every county, no matter where you are in this country, and let them handle the load for a while. And then when you're ready to come back in, step back in. And just saying it out loud to them really takes a lot of the weight off of their shoulders to let them know it's okay, because there's a lot of pressure put on all of us for this, but as you said, we're all volunteers, every one of us. So they need to understand that it's okay that they're not out there changing the world every day. So I just wanted to add that because it helps a lot, and we don't get that much turnover because of stuff like that.
Thank you. Thank you.
I really,
Other
um,
comments?
I love Linda's and everyone's approach to relational. We talk about relational organizing, but relational maintaining of our people, you know, is so important. These check-ins that Bryan are talking about are so important, and people are at different places all the time, and especially now that we've had this pandemic as well, you know, it was already happening, but it really exposed that people are just, sometimes they're trying to give us their very best at just the most emotionally devastating times. And so talking to them, listening to them, and a lot, and I'm the fan of doing, I call them health and wellness checks. You know, how are you doing? And you know, and then also, where do you see yourself, you know, in the next 6 months, in the next 5 years, and you know, sometimes, you know, pulled off of politics for a while, you know, because they've come to you to give their best for a reason. And just talking to them about things that have nothing to do with this, and then we learn so much, and that's how I cover a whole lot of skill sets. You know, they'll come in saying, I'm not really good at blah blah, and they're like, I'm like, well, actually, you're really good at this, because look what you just told me. And so we're able to you know, identify exactly what makes them tick, and then we let them shine where they are. When they're going after our voters, and I love that, and that never gets old. So, you know, even that actually makes me better at what I do, because I find people that I like, I find people that are doing such great things, and I learn so much from our volunteers. So I mean, I'm humbled every day. It's like, I don't know how you're doing X, but I'm certainly going to try and learn from you. And volunteers never know how great they are. So the fact that both of you led with so heavy on the relational with our volunteers, even before we talk to our voters, is so important, and that's what brings it through.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but Ben, did you have any did you have anything that you wanted to say? I think you all know Ben. Ben is our vice chair for county parties. So in Alabama.
Well, and mostly just want to say great job. I don't have anything major to add to all the wonderful comments and the tips. I appreciated some things that were new to me, and I've done this a lot. So appreciated it very much. It's a great program, and glad to see everybody.
Thanks. Any other thoughts from anyone? I'm thinking we're almost ready to wrap. So I do want to thank everyone for joining us. I want to thank our speakers, our technology guy, Anando over there, making sure everything stayed cool, and our guests from Georgia. Thank you. I appreciate everything that everyone said tonight. It was really a good hour of great information and good conversation. And so I'm going to thank everyone once again, and then say goodnight.
Good night, everybody.
Good night,
Also-
everyone. And I'll get that questionnaire out by Monday of next week. I'm actually in Tennessee.
Mm.
Great.
Okay.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.